What's up, everybody? My name is Kevin, and I was going to take some time to go over how I create my worship loops to drop them into Ableton Live. Here you can see I've got a set pulled up, and I'm using a project called Logic Pro X. You can download it from the App Store. This is a song called Fierce by Jesus Culture, and I've got all of the multi-tracks here. So this one's a fairly complicated one, and I'll just kind of walk you through how I like to do the loops. I'll have in all the M4A files dragged in, and I always try to put in the original file too. So this, I'll mute everything, and then I'll unmute this one. This is just the original file, or the original song that I dropped in. And you can even turn on the click. So that's pretty cool. Now I'll mute this and unmute all these. Pretty much this is what you get when you drop in all the files before anything else. If you have a multi-track file, and it will sound something like this.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So you have your guide and all the instruments, and you can use it however you want and whenever you're creating loops. You can even use all these multi-track files in Ableton. I just prefer to do it this way to turn my loop into a stereo mix file with the cues panned to the left and the loop panned to the right. And so this is how I do that. I'll start out and I'll listen through most of the song and figure out what instruments I want to be in my loop. Normally I'll use something that we don't normally have, like a synth bass line. I'll make sure that's in there. We're gonna have guitarists on stage, so I don't need those. We're also gonna have a drummer and a bass guitarist. Don't need that. Our particular band, we don't utilize acoustic guitar that much, so I'm gonna leave that in the loop. And depending on how prominent the keys are, I may or may not leave those in there, or the piano. And this song, I'm just going to leave those unmuted. I'm going to leave those in the loop. Percussion, like shakers or anything like that. For instance, it's got something right here. And it's got more in-depth stuff throughout the rest of the song as well. I'll leave stuff like that in there, stuff that we don't normally have on stage on a Sunday morning. And what I'll do is I'll highlight everything that I'm going to be putting in the loop. Just hold Command and click. And then I'll pan everything hard right, so you can either drag it straight up or double click. And I think it only goes up to 64, so I'll just go to 100. Yeah, 63 is as far pan right as you can get. And the guide, I guess we don't need the guide. I only use the guide to throw in my own vocal cues. And what I mean by that is different songs have different vocal cues. This one uses a female.
1, 2.
And some songs use a male. Some songs use a male that has kind of an excited voice, and some songs use a male that sounds something like this.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
So that's the vocal cues that I use, and I downloaded that cue pack from loopcommunity.com. So go to loopcommunity.com, click on the store. At the very top of the page is band cues. It's a free download. So once you download that, you've got that file somewhere on your computer. I'll show you. I'll go to Finder and cue pack, then English, and here is all the cues, acapella, all the way down to verse, worship leader, whatever you need. I only use a handful of these, but it's good to just keep them all in there just in case. And starting off, you can see this says 1, 2, 3, 4, but I threw intro in there. So that's another reason I like to use my own vocal cues. You can just adapt the song to your liking or to what your band prefers. Some songs will count 2, 3, 4, but maybe it's a faster paced song and I think it's too busy, so I'll just have verse in there or intro in there instead of having the rest of the count in if it's a faster song. This one is not, so I'll keep the rest of them in there. Maybe there's a part of the song that doesn't have a cue in the original track, but the band seems to miss this part, and there's a song that comes to mind that we did a few weeks ago where the original cue counted in a bridge. Well, the band was playing a bridge progression, but it was really just an interlude before the actual bridge, and the vocalist heard bridge and I started singing the bridge, so I went back in and took out that bridge cue and just made it an interlude cue. The band knew what to do still, but the vocalist didn't come in early like they did before. So that's just why I like to use my own vocal cues. I always do it like this every time. Not to mention, it makes it consistent. I've always got this same male vocal cue.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
On every song, it's going to sound the same, and I just prefer that rather than having a female on one or an excited guy on one. You're always going to have this guy. So vocal cues, once I've dropped them all in, and I'll go through the whole song and I'll match them up as best as I can. And I'll have it go with the original track just to see how it all matches up. And I'll go all the way to the very end of the song. And when I'm at the end of the song, I'll just make a note of when the last measure is. In this case, it's going to be measure 84. Hit return, go back to the beginning, mute everything I don't need. So I've got the cues panned left, everything I want in my loop panned right. So now, what I'm going to do is hit Command B or go up to File, go to Bounce, and Projects or Section is what you want to bounce. So I'm going to start at measure 1 and end on measure 84 because we remembered when the last measure was. And we're going to tell it we want it to bounce to an MP3 file. You can do whatever else you want to do. MP3 works best, especially for purposes later if you want to try to transpose. A lot of, especially planning centers, transposition feature doesn't do M4A, only does MP3 files for some reason. So I'll do that, and then I'll click OK, and then I'll name it whatever I want to name it. And I always name it the same way for my loops. I name it the song title, and in all caps I'll put the word loop, then I'll put dash, the BPM, dash, whatever key it's in. And in this case it's 79 BPM in the key of B. Once I bounce that, it will convert all of this to an MP3 file, splitting the cues panned left and the rest of these into a single waveform panned right, and it will usually save to my desktop. And once it's saved to my desktop, I can just double click on that file and it will open it up in my iTunes. And once I've opened it up in my iTunes, I will save it to my Ableton Loops folder. So that was Fierce. Let's go down here and find Fierce, and this is what it sounds like all together.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
You can hear the cues were on the left, the loop is on the right. And in Ableton, as you can see in my other video that I'll include a link for, we'll walk through how I bring everything in from iTunes into Ableton Live and then create my transitions. You'll see that the cues are panned on the left and the loop is panned on the right. So that's for a fairly complicated song. We've got all these instruments in here. What about a song that you get from, say, Loop Community that's already a split file? You've got cues left and loop right. Let's bring up something that, how about Be Lifted High? So Be Lifted High, this is how it was when I first got this song. If I have it panned straight in the middle, this is what you hear. It's going to hear cues on the left and loop on the right.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
And there's that excited guy I was telling you about. Well, this song's a little faster paced. It's 106 BPM, and on every cue, it's got 2, 3, 4 behind it.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
I'll go through the whole song and drop in my own cues like I did before. Sometimes I'll change it up if I don't like what the original cue said. And then I'll make a mental note that's the last measure is 134. Hit enter to go back to the beginning. Once I have dropped in my own cues, I'll pan this hard right, and now you're not going to hear the original cues in the track. You're just going to hear what's on the right, which is the loop. So when I unmute the cues I dropped in and I make sure I have them pan left like I did before, you'll only hear my cues with the loop.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
Pretty cool. Something to note if you're using this program and you have the click turned on, that's fine. Make sure you turn the click off whenever you bounce this to an MP3, otherwise you're going to have that click sound coming through your loop whenever you open this up later. So I would do the same thing here. Enter to go back to the beginning. I've got loop pan left or right, cues pan left. Command B to bounce. Measure 1 to measure 134. Click OK. Then I would name it B lifted high loop dash 106 BPM dash in the key of A. Then I hit bounce. And I'll just go ahead and do that. I'm going to save it to my desktop sheet so you see what it looks like. Bounces the whole file from measure 1 all the way to measure 134. Then it converts it to an MP3. Depending on the speed of your computer, it may take a little longer or be a little quicker. So after that's done, you can close this, exit it, whatever. And there it is on my desktop where I told it to save. And if I double click this, it would open it up in iTunes. I'm not going to do that because I've already got this song in iTunes. Be lifted high. Here it is. And this is what it sounds like.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
Cues on the left, loop on the right, just like we heard earlier. And there you have it. So if you've got any questions about this program, how I've done anything, feel free to drop a comment. I'll be glad to try to answer it for you. Thanks. Until next time, God bless.